and I have some
shoutcasts. Generals, gentlemen. Hello, what is up everybody? I am Oni's Machine from the Generals Gentlemen, and today I am back on Red Alert 3 with a very special guest.
Sybert
from his Sybert series. He's fantastic. So we do have today with a match between Vindies as the blue allies, and on the right side we have...
As the yellow empire, we do in fact have Proffloff.
So we have some dogs coming out of Vindies now, trying to send a scout through the middle of the map as well as around the sea. Very important to try and scout out their base unless they're trying, if they're trying to do some really early aggression as opposed to a standard kind of build.
Absolutely, and it looks like, once again, Proffloff going for those 3 barracks, which is standard, but he's not actually going for the barracks right next to the oil derrick, which is a little bit weird. He will most likely going to be getting out a burst drone unless he can chase that dog away, which he can.
The third dojo core from Proffloff is coming out into these javelins, so it's going to have to run away, otherwise it will get taken out. Yes, it does back off from those javelin troops, keeping it safe.
Although I want to mention, with Vindies bringing the Javelin Troopers that close together, it actually does lead to some potential problems. You want to keep them split up from the Dojo Corps so that they don't both get eliminated at the same time. However, Vindies is controlling pretty well, and I don't think he's going to lose too much here.
So there's a lot of Imperial Warriors on the field now. There are several Peacekeepers against these Javelins. He's doing really well at keeping these Dojo Cores alive, because it's so important keeping one Dojo Core, because then you can really Banzai charge in, and if they shield to actually save themselves from the Banzai charge, they can still get crushed by the Dojo Core.
Absolutely, and I do want to call attention to the Burst Drone being super annoying and just slowing down that Ore Collector a little bit for Vindies, while Vindies is going to be dropping down an airfield.
Sneaky. We did have a dog in Proffloff's base trying to camp down that barracks, but it was just taken down in time. So they're trying to push out now. So we have Proffloff's Imperial Warriors. They're all Banzai charging in. They're going to have to shield those Peacekeepers, keep them alive. But now the Dojo Core has been taken out. He's really relying on that staying alive. So it was good focusing there by Vindies taking out that Dojo Core.
And now Vindies will just be able to sort of micro around these Peacekeepers, switching them from shield mode to non-shield mode, and that will clean up the Imperial Warriors.
Once the Banzai charge goes down, you can just get your shotgun back out, and because they're so close, they'll get knocked back and do a lot of damage.
Absolutely, and I just want to point out, Proffloff going to be expanding right here now, and Vindies, what is he doing? Well, he's going to be expanding to the water. So the third base timing is relatively similar, although I think Proffloff will be a teeny tiny bit ahead.
We have quite a lot of tank busters coming out of Proffloff. He did lose some to the Vindicator, so he's going to try and garrison that civilian structure to keep them alive. We don't actually have a war factory yet, so he's going to be very vulnerable to these Vindicators. He has no form of anti-air, not even in the way of Defender VXs.
No, he has nothing coming out. He's not even building anything, which means these Vindicators could go relatively unchecked, and then, of course, we're probably going to be seeing Cryo-copters at any moment, and once again, another dog sneaking in for Vindies just to do some mid-game scouting.
What he could actually do, he could camp the construction yard if he has enough Vindicators and take out the Mecha Bay as soon as it gets deployed from the construction yard.
That would, at the very least, force a Defender VX, but the Peacekeepers are going to be coming in here. One does go down, and they are actually going to get run over by that Dojo Core a little bit.
Trying to shield, but it was in vain. So the Peacekeeper's trying to keep them alive. He really wants to finish off that Dojo Core, but the Imperial Warriors will not let him by the looks of it. But just kidding, because it does actually go down to that Peacekeeper. We're used to splitting them up, so with the splitting, they could not get camped by those Banzai charge.
Absolutely. So it was good control by both players. However, I think that Vindies may have come out ahead, at least in that little engagement. And he is going to be setting his MCAV up on the ridge, looking to take a 4th expansion.
And now here does come the Mecha Bay out of Proffloff, so that's good to see that up, because it's a really bad position if you can't actually get your Mecha Bay out in time.
And we've only got 2 Vindicators and an Apollo out for Vindies, so it's not a crazy Air Force because he has been constantly pumping infantry. So I'm not entirely sure that Proffloff is as far behind as you might expect.
But Proffloff is losing several of those tank busters to the Vindicators with those stop micro, actually messing up that one there. But he has taken out several ones which he might not have done had he not used the stop micro. We also see Proffloff taking the northern garrison near the oil, so he can take down that oil if he shoots at it from that garrison.
Oh yeah, Proffloff going to be able to possibly take it down. He does begin firing right there, while the rest of Proffloff's infantry have been cleaned up. And I just want to call out these Apollos camping over the base because, hey, you don't need a dog to scout when you've got Apollos.
Vindicator's now taking out that barracks. He could really camp the factory as well. So here comes a VX now. If he hadn't wasted the Vindicator runs on the barracks, he could have actually taken down that VX.
Taking down the VX, and I think that would have actually been more cost-effective to go for the VX.
Yeah, and then you're at that position where you kind of, as Empire, you really got to reach the critical mass where then Allied cannot just camp your factory. You need like 2 or 3 VXs or 5 or so Mecha Tengus.
And the expansion just now finishing up on the water for Proffloff, so that is going to be 4 and 4 for both of these players. So they're actually on fairly equal economic footing.
Proffloff's bear actually just got the scout off on. Vindy's dog getting the scout off on Proffloff's water expansion, and now we do have the dog actually in the way of that harvester, so he is blocking the harvester, very slightly slowing that down, but that's not a big deal because you can just use the machine gun to take down that dog, but he doesn't actually realize it's there.
And over time, that dog will actually negate the cost of the lost mining time of switching over. Not that it's that big of a deal, but Mecha Tengu going to be coming to the forefront and going to take down that Peacekeeper, which I don't know if this is just a bad command from Vindies or if that
Scouting,
was just a bit of a scout.
So our Cryo-copter's on the field now, as well as 2 Vindicators. He's going to try and take out those Tengus, but the Apollos are far too away, so the Tengus can actually escape into the Striker VXs. Very good baiting there into those VXs.
He was able to do a little bit of damage, but they'll get healed back up, and it'll almost be like it didn't happen at all.
The engineer actually is going for that middle observation post from Proffloff. It's not something you usually see. Generally, you see the players actually destroy the outpost more than you see them capture it, but it has gone down now. We have a pretty big sight over Proffloff's base.
Yeah, spending those additional 500 credits. And actually, I do want to call out the spy heading to the front line for Vindies. And when you said engineer, I actually went to check to see if his MCV had been sold off, because I was like, no, he wouldn't build an engineer just to capture that observation post. But if you go ahead and turn on health bars, you can see we need to keep a track of that spy, because it could turn the tide of an upcoming battle.
The Cryo-copters are going to engage those VXs, but with the shrink ray, they will completely nullify the damage. So now he's going to actually take some down with the Apollos and the VXs.
Oh, not with the Tengus swooping in.
And with the combined arms, with the Tengus and the VXs, they do so much damage. The Vindicators are actually trying to hunt down those VXs. With the shrink, they're so fast that we're actually able to dodge those bombs.
Dodge the bombs and losing. I'm not actually sure who lost more, and Apollo War 2 went down for Vindies, but the infantry are going to be engaging on the middle ground, and he is actually really close to the MCV, which could be dangerous for either player.
Those Imperial Warriors were so clumped up, the splash damage ripped through them. Now the Tengus are here as well, with those point defense drones who actually do a lot of damage to those Tengus. The spy did manage to get
the tsunami tank crushing the Imperial Warrior. That could be it. Although no, not with the Mecha Tengus here, and the tsunami tank not doing anything.
The spy did such little with his cell anyway, so more VXs are taking down some of those Cryo-copters. They have so much health. They're basically flying tanks that it's very hard to kill them. Generally, Tengus are the counter to Cryo-copters as opposed to VXs. Trying to shrink down the tsunami tank. With 3 Cryo-copters, they're very, very fast at shrinking down basically whatever they want to.
And freezing it nearly immediately.
Mini Tengu is flying through the sky, a very funny sight to see. They're actually chasing down the Cryo-copter now, and the Cryo-copter does go down.
Throwing away a couple of Cryo-copters, not a good choice to make.
VX almost dying to those Javelin troops. So the infantry style here, though, there are still these infantry in Proffloff's base, so he could laser lock down some critical buildings if he doesn't actually take that Javelin down, which is heroic, by the way, so it will take down the buildings very fast.
The Tengu gets taken out, but will it kill any infantry? It will indeed.
Even the tsunami tank, oh no, I mean with that repair drone, that it just does so much regen as well as the movement speed.
Yeah, I believe it doubles the movement speed, increases the armor, doubles the health, and that is just a very powerful infantry crushing machine.
Same with the hammer tanks, like with the Griner treads, they're so strong at actually countering infantry.
Although with the clutch shrink ray from that Cryo-copter actually avoided losing a couple of more infantry, and another Tengu does go down.
A really forward multi-gunner turret, that's going to be very good for actually baiting units into the turret, like we saw before, baiting that Tengu with the Cryo-copter into the turret so it died.
And yeah, into the Tengus, into the multi-gunner turret, but also into the Javelin troopers, which actually did get cleaned up by that single Imperial Warrior. So I was, man, that engagement, that earlier engagement, which the harassment going down with Cryo-copters and Vindicators, but that engagement, it was actually kind of even, where it was like, I thought one player was going to come out ahead, and then the other player did
turn
something
around, yeah.
Yeah.
So Harvester has gone down, but we are seeing a 5th refinery come out of Proffloff, taking that very southern expansion, which is actually very exposed to naval attacks from Vindies. So meanwhile, Vindies going for the other harassment on that naval harvester, so he has no way of defending this. All he has is a ground-based army with tsunami tanks and with Imperial warriors, so he definitely doesn't have any mobile Tengus or VX to deal with that. He actually is building some Tengus now, getting the point defense drones, and now he will trying to defend those harassment forces, but he has 4 Apollos, and 4 Apollos will rip through 5 Tengus.
Well, actually, with those point defense drones, and depending on where the engagement happens, there is a Defender VX core next to the main base. One tsunami tank will go down. The observation post getting taken out a little bit, but
the Tengus trying to engage
did go down as well.
Yeah, the Tengus tried to engage those Apollos, but they had to transform back down because they knew they couldn't win that. It was interesting, he engaged against a superior Apollo force, and then halfway through he was like, well, that's a bad idea.
And then he was able to engage, but the spy going to be heading forward. It's not actually disguised as far as I know. And actually will get sniped. Oh, bad rally point, and it does go down.
No, he disguised at the very last minute. It's a little bit too late, unfortunately. We have a Cryo-copter freezing down that southern ore collector, and we'll go down to Vindicators. Meanwhile, the observation post did die. No big deal, though. The tsunami tank is using secondary, actually crushing so much infantry, using the split command to mitigate some of the damage, but it still wasn't really enough. I was actually
facepalming a little bit as Proffloff was continuing to shoot the observation post while his stuff was getting taken out, but he actually evened it out a little bit.
Yeah, the Vindicators almost died, but the Apollos were in a very good position
and froze
were
away
able
in Apollo.
Yeah, so now the Tengus are chasing after these Vindicators, but he knows how many Javelins, multi-gunner turrets, and Apollos there are. We have 3 multi-gunner turrets on the field. That's quite a lot.
And I wanted to mention earlier on the expansion, it did go down and he did get some harvesting out of it, but it's just in such a close spot to...
All those Javelins are so close to those Imperial warriors, they're going to bunzai their way through them with the help of those Mecha Tengus, losing so many Javelins to those Imperial warriors. Oh no, that's a terrible loss there, because Javelins cost twice as much as Imperial warriors, so it's a very good trade there if you can trade Tengus for Javelins at a 1-to-1 ratio.
But also, those Imperial warriors didn't do quite as much damage as quickly as they could have. They ended up dealing as much damage as they pretty much could, but they actually ran way past their targets, and now we are going to be seeing Cryo-copters freezing down the refinery instead of going
so
to
much
the
Air
harvester.
Force. 3 Cryo-copters, 4 Vindicators, and 3 Apollos. That's such a huge air army, but the Mecha Tanks are engaging, and there's just so many of them that will actually be able to rip through those Apollos with the help of those
especially with
drones.
The point defense drones.
Even if they didn't, there's just so many of them. All the Apollos have gone down, so now the air superiority has actually gone to Proffloff, so we might have to try and get some IFVs to actually deal with that, because those Cryo-copters are very exposed now, as well as the Vindicators.
They are quite exposed, an additional refinery already out for Proffloff, so he's looking to recover from his losses a little bit and try to get his economy back online. But also, while he's, he lost a refinery, but he's also 1 refinery up on Vindies. So Vindies, while he scored that victory, he's also kind of behind in the economy.
Yeah, and he has rebuilt that harvester as well. So I would like to see some Dolphins come out of Proffloff because there's Vindies, sorry, because you don't need Tech 2, they're only Tech 1, and they're so good at harassing because of their movement speed and because of their high damage. They can't engage very well because of their low health, but that's okay. You don't need to engage against harvesters, and if someone comes to defend it, you can just run away from them. You're in superior movement speed.
Not to mention, to try and defend that refinery, he's going to have to either transform Striker VXs to the sky or double transform Mecha Tengus, or at least single transform Jet Tengus, which makes them almost ineffective. And it looks like Apollo is going to be defending the Cryo-copters, and the Cryo-copters will pull back. The Jet Tengu is going to be giving chase, but that may be a mistake.
Running past all of those Apollos, taking so much more damage than he should. And not only was it the Apollos, but we also had several Javelin troops that were just sitting there, just firing shells at those Tengus. So I thought it was going to go bad for Vindies because he'd lose several Cryo-copter, but he really threw away those Tengus. He should have retreated halfway through that engagement.
Absolutely. He only lost 1 Vindicator one Cryo-copter and I believe 1 Apollo, and he traded it for all of those Tengus. And at that transform at the end almost saved him, but I want to call out the great concave for Proffloff. So this army is going to be engaging into essentially just a straight-up wall of units, a semicircle, which will allow them to all engage at basically the same time.
As well as avoiding crushing from the tanks as well. If they're in a semicircle, it does make it a lot harder than if they're in a line. So good manual splitting there.
Yeah, preemptive manual splitting. May even want to switch over that Defender VX to the gun mode so that it can shoot stuff straight up and then transform it to take care of the aircraft.
The bottom refinery is going down now to that Riptide with the freeze. Meanwhile, the Vindicators were bombing that northern refinery, and because there's just so many Vindicators, he can just take out the refineries without actually the help of Cryo-copter, especially with now we do see 2 heroic Vindicators, so they do quite a fair bit of damage.
The Vindicators are going to be extremely powerful, and while he is going to be able to do quite a bit of harassment damage, we do have a tsunami tank, so Proffloff doing his own bit of harassment, and this will get locked down relatively quickly by Cryo-copters if they're able to deal with it in time. However, the ground army out of Proffloff is looking absolutely terrifying. So many tank busters, and they'll just be able to absolutely shred almost any army out of Vindies.
He really needs a Tanya. Vindies has to get a Tanya to deal with these tank busters, because unless you just spam Peacekeepers, you can't really deal with that many tank busters. And the problem with Peacekeepers is that they die to tsunami tanks very hard with the use of their secondary.
Absolutely. Tanya well microed would be absolutely the defense that Vindies would need to really crush this army. However, I think the Vindicators are coming in for a second run. At least the Cryo-copters are preemptively shrinking down those chopper VXs, making them do almost no damage.
One of the Cryo-copter does go down, bit of mismicro there, but he will lose several of those VXs.
Ooh,
those
Vindies.
Vindicators. So meanwhile, there's more and more Vet coming out of those Vindicators. Now, I'm actually not sure about this. Does Vet decrease their rearm time?
I think it does. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm about 80% sure that it does. So on top of them just dealing more damage, and I believe moving a little bit quicker, they rearm even a little bit faster. However, Vindies did throw away he threw away a Cryo-copter when he could have lost absolutely nothing for that engagement.
Now, I would like to see another Vindicator bombing run just take down this water expansion, because the only anti-air he has is these VXs, which cannot defend in the water. So this expansion in the water is there for the taking, which he has not. He's trying to harass the defended expansion.
And also, taking down the oil derrick, not a huge deal. I don't know if he needed to use all 4 of those Vindicators, but he will go ahead and take that down, and the chopper VX is being pulled back to preemptively defend.
It's actually surprising how long those old derricks have been there for a while. You think that Proffloff should have really used the opportunity when he did have that air superiority advantage. He could have just got his VXs in the air, as with the Tengus, and actually taken down that old derrick.
That could have actually helped Proffloff stay a little bit ahead in the economy game, because now with equal amount of ore refineries and with that oil derrick getting cleaned out, it's going to be Vindies just pushing ahead in the economy.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm a little bit disappointed how we aren't seeing any naval aggression. Like, as we saw, it only takes one tsunami tank, it only takes one dolphin, and you will lose that harvester. They're kind of just camping a huge army when they could be harassing these water expansions so easily with naval units.
Yeah, but I mean, do you even need to when you've got 3 Cryo-copters freezing down a refinery? And what is Proffloff even going to do? He doesn't have.
He's pushing out. That is exactly what Proffloff is doing. He is pushing through the middle of the map with so many tank busters, so many tsunami tanks as well. The Cryo-geddon is an absolutely huge shot. He's going to have to split up all his army to avoid that damage, but so many tank busters. Let's go down to that shrink. And with the splash damage from the Peacekeepers, they can rip through those frozen tank busters.
But also, as you saw that, the cryo shot effectively split the army, not quite in half, but locking down a lot of those units. And no, what the heck is Proffloff even doing? He's actually doing enough damage.
Are staying in his back. He didn't engage with those VXs.
But he did so much damage with those tsunami tanks that it's actually not going to be quite as one-sided, although Vindies certainly did come out ahead in that engagement. Proffloff has almost nothing left.
I would definitely like to see some King Onis and Waveforce artillery, because they're so good at picking those engagements. I prefer Waveforce over Athenacans, because with the use of the secondary, you can snipe infantry a lot better than you can with other artillery. You
can snipe infantry, but also artillery don't take a full shot to destroy. So if you've actually charged up a little bit, then you can fire off early before the Athena cannons can actually fully target.
VX is warding off that air assault there. Good work with his VX placement. So we do have another refinery coming down from Proffloff. He's trying to get these water expansions back, and he really needs to.
Yes, he certainly does need to get his economy back online to have any sort of a chance.
Vindies is pushing out with his Athena cannons and with the infantry, but he doesn't have much of a grand army apart from his Athena cannons. So those tsunami tanks could actually rip through those Athena cannons well, but the Mirage tanks were frozen. That's where his army was. Not frozen.
Them?
No, I didn't realize they were there. Whoops. So using the decoy very well. I don't know if Proffloff realized they were there, but I sure didn't. So now,
I was gonna say, with the Mirage tanks and the Athena cannons, he should be able to tear down Proffloff bit by bit.
MCV dying in seconds. That didn't last long at all, and Proffloff calling the GG.
Good game indeed. Although it did kind of slow down in the middle a bit, it was quite entertaining.
Yeah, the first half of it, we just saw so many constant infantry battles between those Javelins Peacekeepers against those Imperial Warriors, and then later in the year it turned into that, but with tsunami tanks as well. And then it got to the stage where once they started hitting critical mass, they were kind of too scared to engage their armies.
Exactly, and what the difference came down to, if you check that resource graph, Proffloff was a little bit ahead in some of those points, and actually, in the end, Vindies collected more ore, which is actually kind of surprising that they were so similar. I would have thought with the amount of harassment that Vindies did that he would have been further ahead, but it was actually quite equal.
Yeah, I think that the real turning point was when Proffloff, he got to the stage where he was losing his refineries. So he knew, yeah, I have to push, and he did just exactly that. But he mismicroed that very hard. I mean, the Cryo-copter did very good at splitting him up, but then the tank busters were engaging when the tsunami tanks weren't, and then the Vexers didn't even engage at all. So he definitely could have organized his army a lot better than he did.
We gave him props for that concave early on, but yeah, exactly, that's what it was. He was engaging with part of his army, part of it was frozen, and then the tank busters engaging, nothing else was. It was just sort of sitting around knitting and twiddling their thumbs.
Actually, one thing I'll mention, I don't think we ever saw any secret protocols from Empire apart from that drones. We didn't see any Emperor's Fury, we didn't see any, even balloon bombs, or what they call the little flying planes that crash. They can be very good in like a huge battle like that, because then it forces them to split their army up. Same thing as Cryo-copter, where it puts them out of position.
Yeah, and also the balloon bombs. Some people will actually auto-engage those, and then you can rush in while they're engaging, although that may not have made a difference in this match.
Well, I think that'll summarize any last words for this cast. That was a really awesome game, so I hope you liked it, and be sure to check out more of our double casts soon.
This is Sybert signing out.
Goodbye.